Dilruk, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Like I mentioned just before, you have a very, very extensive CV. I think they're one of the most colourful people we've had on the podcast because
we're getting racial straight away. I love it. Thank you. I know you had the Nelson twins, which is one shade of white, and at least now we've got a mix of brown coming through.
That's one way of looking at it. But hey, look, you're a Logie Award winner. You've met Chris Hemsworth, which I think.
I can't believe that's the next most interesting thing I've done. After the Logie, you go, he's met Thor.
I have a crush on him. That's why. I think you have a crush on him according to Instagram. Yeah, for sure. You've been on the project. You've been on MasterChef. I'm a celebrity. Get me out of here. There's so much things you've done. I think, but you're known to be a comedian, though, right? That's Dilruk, and you are Sri Lankan. So, and the thing with Sri Lankans and Sub-continent is there are so many successful comedians from the subcontinent. So what makes you guys so funny? Is there something in the curry that makes you guys funny? Well, what is it?
Could be the cinnamon kind of fires you up there, you know. But no, are there many people successful from the subcontinent, or is just that they stand out more?
That's actually a good point.
Do you know what I mean?
That's a very good way.
So if you run through some of their names, you got Russell Peters, you got Hassan Minhaj, you got yourself.
Oh, well, that's hugely. I don't think I deserve to be in that list just yet. Let me work on it a bit more. What I find more fascinating is in Australia, there are there's me, Nazim Hussain, and Suren Jayamana, who were all Sri Lankan heritage and all formerly Big Four accounting firm employees. The fact that there are 3 Sri Lankan heritage accountants turned comedians is what I find the most ridiculous. Kind of like, and don't drink. Oh no, Suren drinks. Right. Yeah. So that's like, but I was like, the stat, it's just, we're too similar in that sense. But
you also have Ramesh overseas as well. Ramesh
Ranganathan. Oh man, his new special on Netflix is so good. Yeah.
Again, another Sri Lankan. He's Sri Lankan.
He's Sri Lankan heritage. Yeah.
Something about Sri Lankans being
so
funny.
What is it? Why are you guys so funny?
Again, look, I appreciate that it may be something genetic. It could be great. Maybe because maybe competing with India, like we always have small person syndrome kind of thing, like wanting to like punch above and like stand out as, because in Australia, since it's coming up to 19 years that I have been here, and I was 19 when I arrived. So really half and half of my life have been half in Sri Lanka, half in Australia. So I think for the last 19 years, I've constantly been having to correct people when they say, "Oh, you're Indian." I'm like, "No, Sri Lankan," or whatever. So I think maybe that fuels the drive to want to stand out and make sure that my identity as a Sri Lankan doesn't get whitewashed as it is.
So I'm getting that you are like that though. You're punching above your weight because
in terms of my dating life, or what do you mean?
Because you said the comparison between Indians and everyone thinks you're Indian,
right.
So you're there trying to prove a point.
Yeah, maybe I'm not. I mean, look, not consciously. I'll put it that way. Right. This is all of this. For me, the reason I even do this is purely because I just thought it was the coolest thing that I ever could think of being part of. Like, and I'd watch stand up, and I'd be like, I couldn't believe that this existed as a thing because I loved consuming it so much. I'm like, imagine being able to even be behind the stage and hang out with them, not even thinking of performing, right? And then I was working at KPMG, and they fired me. Well, I say fired, but it was more that they didn't extend my probation period when I was a graduate worker there. But that was the impetus that made me go, well, I did that job purely for the money, and I was very unhappy because I'd, left Sri Lanka to study accounting. I got this, job in one of the Big Four firms. This was the dream. Yeah. And I was miserable. And I was like, I remember thinking, people saying it's hard now, but you can, once you work up the ladder, it gets easy. And I was like, I remember seeing a quote in a book, Stephen Covey's book, and it said, there's no point climbing up a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what it feels like. I'm really struggling to get up, but I don't want to be the topmost position I could get. I don't want to be that person. So why am I struggling now? So when they fired me, it gave me that thing to reverse engineer and go, well, I did accounting purely for money and I was unhappy. What if I went the other way around? What if I was a billionaire and I bought the cars and the house and traveled and all that? What would I do? What would I spend my time doing? And I was like, I just figure out how to get involved in stand-up, whether it was on stage or behind the scenes or whatever. And so that was why I ended up doing stand-up, is because it was just something burning inside me to want to do it,
Had you always been funny?
Well, I think not the first 3 years of stand-up. I wasn't. Well, I wasn't funny in that context of stage. I think I was able to make people, like, my circle of friends laugh, or a lot of 21st speeches I would get asked to do. At uni, whenever there was like a booze cruise or something to promote, I would, be the one, before the lecture starts, putting the slide and saying, come to this party or whatever. So I think I had that ability to make people laugh. And my brother, when, my brother is funnier than me, like he's 5 years older, but he's funnier than me, just doesn't have my insecurities of wanting to be funny to everybody. He was quite happy being funny to a small group. But he, whenever I made him laugh when I was like 8 or something like that, he would go to mom's handbag and steal like 10 rupees and pay me. And so if it was a really good joke, he'd give me 20 rupees. So I think, there's evidence to say that I was probably funny, but I was never the funniest around. That's for me, I find that interesting, that it was never like this thing where people were like, oh, you should do stand-up because you're, funny. I was just like, just as funny as anyone would be with their mates.
You talk about your mum, your brother. Being from Sri Lanka, I'm from Pakistan.
Yeah, right.
Sub-continental connection there.
Right.
Now, in the subcontinent community, being a comedian is not considered to be a job. Do you cop flack from your family, from your parents? They say, look, you know what, Dilruk, this is just a phase. At some point, you're going to wake up and realize that, look, you know what, you actually have to have a real job. Yeah,
I think they may have felt it, but they didn't show it to me.
Okay.
This is my immediate family, my mom and dad. They saw how sad I was at KPMG, and they knew that I was like, this bubbly guy. And what happened to that bubbly guy? Like, why is he so like drained and lost every video call? I don't know if it was WhatsApp or maybe Skype, probably back then, whatever. But yeah, I was just like, hey, whatever. And so when I said, hey, I want to go ahead and give this a shot, there was a lot of support and excitement. My dad did think I was only going to do it as a hobby.
Yeah.
And that was about 6 months into me doing stand-up, and I was going like hard. Like as soon as I did my first gig, which I bombed, which is very controversial word to use when there's 3 brown men in the room together on video camera, let's be honest. Right? And so, but the gig went terrible, and I yet was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this, because in spite of it going badly, I just love the process of it, and I'd never done anything that I enjoyed the process of. So that just lit me, just lit me up. So that next 6 months or whatever that I just kept going was, even if I wasn't performing, I was watching gigs and stuff. I went to my account. I was working for a small accounting firm, and I went to my boss the next day and said, I want 1 day off a week. I want to be a comedian. And he's like, but does it pay? I'm like, not yet, but it's an apprenticeship. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And that accounting boss is now my accountant, so that's come full circle. Yeah. But I think my dad was a bit like, oh, well, how are you been going? Like, have you looked at any of the other big 4 firms? And so I'm like, no, like the comedy thing, remember? He's like, oh, but isn't that a hobby? I was like, no, man, I'm all in. Like, and so I think he was scared. I think any parent, I don't know if do you guys have kids?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think instinctively, you just want to know that they're going to be okay, especially when you're gone, because you're not going to be there to protect them. You just want to see them set up in a way that they can look after themselves. And it was hard to explain how this, telling jokes into a microphone for 5 minutes is ever going to pay off. And then they came and watched me 2 years later, and again, a terrible gig. I just died on my ass. And I remember my mum who's Muslim, doesn't swear, doesn't like that I swear. When she used to watch my video clips, she would put it on mute and watch it. Okay. And she was just so proud, but she didn't want to hear her son swear. And so my mum said, oh, you look happy doing it, which I was like, oh, you probably shouldn't have said anything, because it just shows that you did enjoy it. Yeah. But I think it just was undeniable that I was a happier person. And it's almost like I told them I'd rather be a broke comedian than a rich accountant. And that's just the way I'm wired. Who knows why? I just don't want to pretend like, this is not me anymore. Like, you know what I mean? And I just kind of lent into it. And so because I was always, vocal about that, they just got it after that. They're going like, look, and my dad was, after that one little moment of doubt, my dad was the first person every morning to text me going, hey, how was that gig? Did you do a new 5 minutes or whatever? Like, was very involved.
Your biggest fan.
Yeah, I reckon he might be, because my Amazon special, he has watched it 22 times.
Wow.
And he cries at the end of it every single time. I hope it's happy tears, not just going, I can't believe he's not a doctor. Or, but no, it's genuinely happy tears, and he's just so proud. So I would say between him and my brother, I think that it's a fight for who's the biggest fan.
As a kid growing up, or even over the years, is there any one particular comedian who you've gravitated to the most, who you've seen, look, you know what, if I can hit that standard, if that's the benchmark I set for myself, I'd be pretty happy with where I've gotten to?
I have people who inspired me and stuff like that, but I've never used other people's standards as the benchmark. My only goal, if I had one, was to be full-time with comedy. Just be able to live off the fact that pay rent and bills from telling jokes. That was my thing. Now, touch wood, I was able to do that in 2016. In 2017, my parents were back in Australia, came to Australia. They saw me headline the Comics Lounge in North Melbourne, the big comedy venue there. And that was where I had my first ever gig in front of like 20 people. And that's where I, died. And to see, what was it? 7 years later, I'm the headliner, and there are people like lining up to take photos, and my mom and dad saw. And there's a photo on my phone that I keep, which is them standing with me, and they look so proud.
Yeah.
For me, I saw that photo, and it hit me. Oh, I decided that was my career peak. Like, I was like, this is the top. This is more than I thought I was going to achieve, because deep down, I think I was afraid that I knew that I was going to do this for the rest of my life. There was no evidence that I was going to be good at it, because I sucked at it at the start. But I think for me, because again, I didn't have any expectation of when it has to work out. I just was like, well, it's 20, 30 years. I don't care. I'm just going to keep doing this because that's how much I love it. And I guess I was sad that maybe mom and dad won't be alive to see it come through. So for me, the fact that they were there in the flesh, saw it, and was just blown away by my ability to entertain like 400 people like that. I was like, oh, that's it. That's all I've been really deep down chasing. So from that moment, I kind of drew a line in the sand and was just like, everything from here now is bonus. So for me, in terms of your question about who I want to aspire to, it sounds really arrogant, but I've kind of passed my own expectations. So each year, I just give myself a new target of what I want to improve on from this year and try and aim to get that. And, there have been years that I missed the mark, and I was like, I know what I was trying to do and I didn't get it. But because I'm my only parameter that I'm focused on, I find it better for my mental health, because it's easy to get distracted by the industry and opportunities that people are getting that you really wanted and you think you deserve more. And it's just a lot of unhealthy noise that messes up what I do because I love it. Because the whole point is I do this because I love it. And anything that poisons that love, I try and flush it out. Yeah. And it's not to say that I don't have those feelings. It kicks in. I've just gotten better at going, good for them. Well done. Yeah. And then, let it dissipate and then go back to, okay, what did I want to do this year? What was my target? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, let me get back to, the mission at hand.
Yeah. I think we have to hear the story of how you bombed your first gig.
Well, it's no story. I was just shit. It's just, I was new. You know what I mean? It was very harmless. So I think the audience, I think if there's, I genuinely don't think I'm talented at anything. So everything anything that I think I do well, was something I was really bad at, and I had to work my ass off to get to. So I always feel like I'm, if the average person is here, I'm down here. So I have to work heaps just to match the average person, and then just kill myself to get to surpass the average person. So with stand-up, with the first gig, it was just, there was no clever writing, there was no performance. But what I did have, I think, and knock on wood still do, is I think I'm able to get the audience to barrack for me from the time I hit the stage. There's just that's something I don't know and I'm not in control of or aware of. But that may be the only thing that I'm gifted at or whatever, is that there's just a genuine sense of I really want him to go well, but he's not good. So that's probably that's the only really description. It was just jokes about being an accountant, and and there was nothing good. It was just it was cute. It was just and I
Do you cringe thinking about it?
Not at all, because it's the same way I would look at a drawing I did when I was in first grade.
Right.
You know, you go, that's the best I could do at the time. And, you know, I didn't get any better at drawing, but I don't hold that going, oh, what an idiot 5-year-old Dil just drew that. Oh, I can't even color in the lines. I won't do that to my 5-year-old self. So I'm not going to do that to my day one of stand-up.
When you say you bombed, they didn't laugh, or are you just saying that you yourself thought it was horrible?
Both. Well, the thing about the thing, just to quickly on the cringe thing, the things I do cringe about, by the way, is when I know I was better than that at that time, and something got in the way, and whether it was, you know, back in my drinking days, I never drank before a gig, but sometimes I would go so hard the night before that the hangover would trickle into the next day. So for me, those are ones I cringe at. Like there's a video of mine that I'm just trying to bury, but I don't know why it keeps popping up, right? And I hate it because you're sweating and you just sweats, and between cuts, like the sweat keeps building up, and then it'll cut to the audience and cut back to me, the sweat's dried, and then it builds up again, and then the cut, like it's mid-sentence, suddenly it's dried. It's terrible. And like you can see the shirt just sweat up. So that I cringe about, not because I'm embarrassed at how bad I was back. I know I was so much better on, like, my skills at the time did not match what I was delivering in that clip. And that's because I let myself down. Or sometimes it'll be like if I walk into a gig too cocky and just wasn't present. Then again, I'm cringing. Like there's a gig that happened on the 2013 September 21st that I went so badly on a Saturday. I was still working as an accountant. I couldn't go to work on Monday because I was so sad about how bad that gig went. And I still remember the date as well. But that's the stuff that I cringe about, because I know I was better on that day. That first gig, I'm like, man, no one taught me, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it. And I think that's what gave me the drive to keep going, because I'm like, oh, man, you're bad at this and you still love it. Imagine if you got good. How much more would you love it then, you know? So it was just very much like completely process driven for me. Like just focus on how can I get better for the next time.
Yeah. Now talking about process, you've gone through a number of different transformations. Obviously, you've migrated to Australia and all that, but you've also gone through a physical transformation as well, and that's something that you've spoken a lot about. And I think something that you take a lot of pride in, the fact that you evolved physically. In that journey, you had a heart attack.
Yeah.
That was this year.
That was this year, April.
Earlier this year, and that was after you lost the weight.
Yes.
So a lot of people seem to assume that you lost the weight because you had a heart attack. This was after.
I mean, it was the most. It's still very raw. Yeah. It's actually what I'm writing about right now, because my next show, next tour is called Heartstopper, for obviously the heart attack reason, but also in Hindi, Dil means heart and Ruk means stop. So Heartstopper, it's just in the stars, right?
Walking marketing machine.
Exactly. Look at me, I'm the billboard.
So I'm working through the material, and to be honest, I'm a little afraid right now, but I'm at that right level of afraid. I remember David Bowie saying that when you're being creative, you need to be feeling like you're in the water and your toes are just in the ocean, and your toes are just touching the sand and your head's just above there. Because any further back, you're too comfortable. Any further forward is too dangerous. So I'm feeling that right now, because it's so hard to write about something that was so scary, you know, and I'm finding that some angles. But Cal Wilson, the comedian, she gave me a great phrase. They're saying that people want to see your scars, not your wounds. So make sure they're healed, and then you're able to talk about them. But I'm worried that this is still a wound. But the heart attack, it shocked me to the core, because for context, I was a big drinker after I came to Australia. Quit drinking 12 years later, around 2016, and then 2018, 1st of Jan onwards, I started doing this health kick. I managed to lose the weight. I went from 125 kilos to sub like 95 or something like that, and then maintained that for a while. Did a marathon in 2019, so that's 42 kilometers. And then the pandemic happened, and I could feel the pangs of wanting to drink and binge again. I was like, no, screw you, you're not going to get me. And I went even harder. So I lost more weight. I got down to like 75 at one point. So I was like in peak fitness. Then got into a relationship and got comfortable and started getting a little bit cushier. And so what happened was the heart attack then happens, say, April 2022. And in that moment, the first time, it's quite a long story to unpack, but generally when they told me it's a heart attack, I think my first thought was going, why the hell did I stop drinking and get here? I was going to have a heart attack anyway. And then the other part of me realized that because the reason I had the heart attack was two things. One, my cholesterol intake over the years was pretty intense up until the weight loss. Even after the weight loss, I was still eating a lot of like fatty foods and red meat. And even though I was running and being fit, it didn't compensate for the cholesterol buildup. And on top of that, subcontinental men, apparently we have thinner arteries, fat cocks, but thinner arteries. But I think it was just this thing of realizing that, okay, this is part genetics, part lifestyle. And it was an 80% block in the artery. And it was because I was fit that I survived it, because the muscles around the heart was so strong that it kept pumping through the block. So when I went to the doctor, it was just such a minor, like, it was barely a pain. It was just a discomfort, like when you swallow water incorrectly sometimes, you feel the tightness. That was it. That's what even the doctors were like, look, your ECG is showing really good signs. Like usually if you have anything bad, means you can see some damage to the heart, but it's just pumping really well. So it's just psychosomatic. But yeah, they found out an 80% block in an artery that they've nicknamed the Widowmaker. Yeah. And so the fact that I was able to still walk to the doctor and I was like, fine.
So you didn't lose the weight, you were gone.
What do you mean? If I didn't lose the weight, I would be gone. But like, well, not gone necessarily, but definitely more severe in terms of, because now I have a stent, which is where they put it in, I don't know. I don't even know. I was too scared to ask the questions, but I know it's just some sort of coil that pushes the artery out a bit. And I think if I was heavier or whatever, it could have been like maybe bypass or something more drastic, or I could be gone. I don't know. But I know without a doubt that being fit saved me that day. And I was able to jump back on stage 5 days later because of the cardio fitness that I had built up. But yeah, it's and that dichotomy of recognizing how my fitness has saved me, but at the same time I was still, that this still happened. It just switches between like love-hate kind of thing. Like I genuinely, I went from doing a lot of therapy on trying to not hate my body. And man, as soon as that happened, that all came back. Yeah. And in fact, counterintuitively, you'd think that after having such a health scare that I would lose weight. But my coping mechanism when I'm sad is to eat. Yeah. And since then, I've put on more weight. And I've worked, again, I'm working through it. And like you said, I think you used the word journey or transition and been through different transitions. Like I'm in like the transition of realizing, if I don't get some new strategies now, like this is going to keep going up again. So whatever I was doing before, I can't do it again because now my confidence is shot. Whenever I'm on a run, if I get a slight discomfort, I'm like, oh God, what is happening here? So I'm holding myself back from exerting myself because it might be fine. It might just be fitness, but I can't shake the fear. Like I'm just completely rattled by that whole experience. So I'm like, okay, well, that's cool, but how do we then balance nutrition? How do you not, overeat every time you're sad? Every time you miss your family, you look for chips. You know what I mean? So those are the things that I'm wrestling with. And I kind of, again, if you can get any sense from me, it's that I do love a challenge and I do love, attacking a problem. Yeah. So in a way, I've now, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have been more down about it. 2 weeks now, I've been a bit more proactive about it. And I'm kind of like, I'm savoring the new challenge. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I'm learning some new things about me because all of this is feedback, everything that happens to you, if you choose to let it be a lesson, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, cool. I think we're going to get some good feedback because as soon as it happened, and I've done this in the past with the getting fired from the Big Four firm, alcohol problem. I remember saying, okay, this is my low point, but I'm somehow, I don't know how yet, but I know I will make this one of the best things that happened to me. And that came true with the comedy, with getting fired from accounting. I went into comedy and now get to live my dream job. And then with the alcohol thing as well, I was like, I didn't know, it was the worst sort of mental health space I'd been in a long, ever. I would say that when I hit rock bottom with booze, that I kind of was like, I don't know how, but this will be one of the greatest things to happen to me because I choose to take a really hard lesson from it and flip it. So that's what this last week has felt like that for the first time since the heart attack in April when we're recording in December. So it took me like, again, I wish it happened right then and there, but just sometimes life just steamrolls you a bit, and I just couldn't get to this point of, resilience that I'm starting to taste again.
So you're creating a show, Heartstopper, and you said you're developing the content. So how does it go when as a comedian developing the content? So you found this situation when you had a heart attack. What are you gonna do? Like, you can make fun of the situation, or how do you go about developing the content for your gigs or for your comic?
Well, I think I've always just been very anecdotal. I've always looked at my shows as, I try and write to an audience of one, meaning me. I want to write stuff that I find funny, because it's too hard to control, people's opinions. So, and not just funny to me, but if I was Dilruk the fan watching Dilruk the performer, I want to see some growth. I want to see a step up. I want to see something that is different from the years before, And so the way I kind of write is more like going, what are the things I wish I could tell that dude, now, heads up, this is what your year is going to look like. And that's kind of the only parameter I give myself. From there onwards, I just try my best to keep it as, I don't say honest, because it's more authentic. So there might be, I would say 90% of what I say it actually happened. There's 10% maybe you just add a bit of sizzle and sweetener. Or if there's two, stories, happening in multiple locations, I'll just put them on the one location. That kind of what's the word? Producing or manufacturing I do, like just kind of put them together. That'll do, because otherwise it's hard for the audience to keep up with. But other than that, that's just my only thing. Like when you say make fun of it, like I don't know, like I don't think I've. It's just more about. What do I find interesting about what happened in this particular year? The reason I'm pushing myself to talk about it is because I wished someone I was watching in a comedy show told me Sub-continental people have thin arteries, so you can't eat the same level of cholesterol that a white person can, or whatever, because that's what my cardiologist said. I don't even know if he's allowed to say it, but he said your level of cholesterol in a white person would have been fine. Right?
That's racist.
Like, what kind of Pauline Hanson shit is this, But he's not racist in the sense that it's accurate. So why pretend? Why try and cancel him? So for me, I was like, let me at least, and it honestly, I'm not tooting my own horn, but it kind of paid off 3 days later. But I was hesitant to post it on Instagram for the exact sort of things you might understand, which is I had done the health kick and then had a heart attack. I was embarrassed because I made such a big song and dance of getting fitter that now I had a heart attack. It's like, oh, what? Like, this is, it's like almost like,
It was pointless.
Yeah, it's like a season, you just some TV show repeating a season again. Like, oh, here we go. He's on a health thing again. It's like, I was just like, no one needs to know. But then I was like, no, it was a close call. So I just better put it out there. And then, so that was, I think I posted about it on the Saturday. And then on the Monday or Tuesday, I get a message from someone who saw my post. She's like 27, 28, gym fit, had a discomfort, would have ignored it normally, but then went to the doctors and found like a block between something in her brain. And she was in hospital for like a couple of weeks or something, sorting it out. And she genuinely messaged me saying, hey, if not for your post, I would have ignored it. So thanks for posting that. So for me, it's already paid off in terms of having a platform that I was able to talk about it. At least one person benefited from it. But say, this year it'll be more about that kind of thing. It's not my main reason for telling, because obviously I don't really, set out to teach people anything. Again, it's all about what's the thing I wish I'd heard, as an audience member. And I'm just writing to that guy,
How do you navigate controversial things in your comedy? Because we've got cancel culture right now. And even comedians are being questioned with what they're saying, because there's a lot of sensitive people out there, sensitive topics and whatnot. Is that something that you're worried about? Is that something that you take into account? Or do you feel like, I'm a comedian, I could pretty much say whatever I want? Because back in the days, comedians could say whatever they want and they get away with it. Do you think it's still the same?
It's definitely not the same. We can see that it's not the same, But I think it's about how each person approaches it is, it's up to them. For me, I actually kind of like it. For me, I like it because there are things that I might have said thinking, oh, I'm just a comedian telling jokes, and reflected on 10 years later going, oh, you know what? That doesn't reflect who I am as a person and my values today or even back then. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's that thing of like realizing that without just running and just saying whatever I feel like just for the sake of comedy, that the fact that I know that there's more accountability for what you say forces me to pause and think a little bit harder about, do I, almost going, if someone's going to get hurt by this joke, is the joke worth it? And if I can't, and I think, remember Mark Maron said something like, if you can't be funny without hurting people's feelings, then you're probably not good at your job. So, and there are some people who that's their shtick and that's what they're known for. Like, Jimmy Carr is a great example, and that's his entire identity, to the point that if you buy a ticket to go see him, it's kind of now on you. That's what you're expecting, and that's what he's known for. And I think that should exist too, as well. I just think that for someone like me, and the type of, humor, like, again, writing to that one guy, Dilruk, the audience member, what are the things that he'd be, disappointed in, that I just went for a cheap racist joke, or, like, do you know what I mean? Like homophobia, whatever those things, those topics that are considered controversial. I think it's just being sensitive to humanity. That's all. That's how I phrase it. So for me, the cancel culture thing, I can't escape it. Even if I try, no matter, that's the other thing. You can't really win anyway. You can only just bring it back to yourself, I think, and go, would I, is this a thing that even if I get in trouble for, I know my heart was in the right place, and then do it. But, so for me, having that extra filter of trying to empathize with what's the subject of the joke versus the target of the joke, and is the target a group of people that are marginalized and already having a shit time? I don't want them to come to my show and be like, oh, there's hundreds of more people now laughing at what he's saying, and this is what they're laughing at in public. Imagine what they must be laughing at in private. And that is, again, it's a hard one, because there's a difference between me, the performer, and me, the consumer. Me, the consumer of comedy, of like Jimmy Carr's and your controversial people, I have a different lens, because I'm like, that's authentic to who they are. They push those boundaries. They're more adept, or what's the word, deft at handling that type of thing. You know what I mean? So I'm more than happy for them to do it. It's just not my style. It's like, see, if you take controversial comedians or whatever versus maybe on the lesser scale, in my sense, it's like, hardcore heavy metal versus someone playing folk rock. You won't say, hey, this folk player with the ukulele, why aren't you doing headbanging stuff? It's like, it's just not what I do, But doesn't mean that person who plays the ukulele can't enjoy Slipknot,
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's actually a
very
good
good
parable.
analogy.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
great.
You talk about engaging your audience. Now, in today's world, your audience is spread across so many different platforms. You have people watching your Netflix specials. You've got people watching, on Amazon Prime, on YouTube, on other platforms like that. When you're creating content, are you ever worried about the fact that if I have a particular set that I'm using, and that same set is being used across different platforms, if that one big fan of mine, accesses my content on one platform, another platform, they're getting the same content again and again and again, and won't they sort of be disenfranchised or disconnected from me once they get bored of my content? Do you feel that you have to refresh content more frequently now because it's so spread across platform?
The social media and internet side of the entertainment world is my blind spot.
Okay.
I genuinely, I have a TikTok account, for example, and I think I have like 6 videos posted. There are people who have grabbed my video from somewhere else and posted on their account that's got more views than my actual account. So I don't know I just don't know that game that well. You know what I mean? And it's not to say that I don't wish I was. I really bloody wish I had a stronger following in terms of online presence and things like that. It's just not what I'm good at / interested in. So it is a blind spot that I eventually want to work on. But right now I'm a bit like, I still have a lot more to learn within the craft. Say this year, for example, writing the show. My priority isn't, is this going to be a good grab that will get shared on TikTok? It's more like the people paying good money to see me and having to find a car park or take the train in and plan their dinner and, have a night out. Are they getting my best effort on that live show? Because it doesn't matter like what mood I'm in or not. If they've shown up, I have to give them my best effort. And if I don't, I will hold myself accountable and beat myself up about it. So for me, that takes up more of my energy than I have left over to figure out how to make things work online. In terms of being overexposed or whatever, it's genuinely in the too hard basket for me to worry about. Like, I swear to God, like you're probably right. You're probably right where they might think going, I might be losing what's the word? A coherent voice because he's on MasterChef here, then he's swearing his head off in this show there, then I did a show called Last One Laughing where I was like on Amazon bathing some Sam Simmons with Fanta while he was naked, like, you know what I mean, like sure, people might be confused like as to what I am, but I'm not good at playing that game. I found a game that I love playing and want to get better at, which is thinking of an idea, jotting it down, and then fleshing it out on an open mic night and multiple times, and then getting into routine, and then performing it and touring it. That's the game I want to play. And everything that's come around it is bonus. Do you know what I mean? So there's like, I have, I think, 2 clips on my Instagram that I've pinned that are million plus. I think one's 3 million. I don't know why. You know what I mean? Like, I can think about why, because it had like a quote-unquote controversial idea being about this girl on Tinder who said, don't swipe right if you're don't like my profile if you're Indian or Chinese. And it's just people debating about whether that's racist or not, you know what I mean? And now if I'm someone who focuses on what the audience want to hear, I would go, I need to write more bits that get people talking. But that's never been my process. My process is going, what's tickling my brain? What do I really just want to talk about this year? And what, like one year I did a 10-minute routine on scented candles, and I'd never thought I wanted to do that. It just came out of me, and I'm like, great, let's just do that, because that's what I was finding most interesting that year, and people resonated with it. I didn't think they would. I spent like 10 minute chunk on asylum seekers and trying to make a really like point that I was really passionate about that worked fine. The fucking candles just honestly crushed so hard, and that just literally was like an improvised rant one night that I just hung on to. And so much so that the following year's tour, when I went to Perth and Adelaide, people would bring scented candles and leave on stage. So I can't control that. That's the thing. So I've learned to just go, what's burning inside me to say, and just try and say that as authentically me and as true to what I believe in as possible. And again, there's limitations because there's things that I'm probably, being more vulnerable, in a non-comedy environment. Obviously, with stand-up, you always want to make sure you end on a joke or hit the funny part of it, which is a struggle with the heart attack at the moment in that sense. But that's the restriction of stand-up as a format. It has to still be funny, at least in my opinion. If it's not funny, then you have to. How do I put it? For me, being funny is punching the clock in when you come to work, right? From there, what do you choose to do? Do you want to tell a story? Do you want to this? That's all that. But the base level, if it's not funny, it
defeats the purpose.
Exactly. It defeats, exactly, perfect phrasing. It defeats the purpose. So for me, I just don't have that time to learn the skills required to, and I'm lucky enough that I'll just. I think it's paid off for me so far, which is that just focus on the thing you're doing and everything that comes after the bonus. Some would say that's lazy, sure. But I got into this to be happy. And, as soon as I start deviating from my purpose or my calling, which is to do stand-up, the unhappier I feel. So I love doing acting. I love doing reality TV and stuff like that, but I always position it in a way that doesn't affect the stand-up.
Fair enough.
Speaking of reality TV, you've been on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. You're the first person to get eliminated.
Yeah, in my year. First person to get eliminated.
First person.
Yeah, I was the only one to put on weight after doing it. Everyone else lost weight. I got fatter.
How'd that happen?
I just ate everyone else's food.
So, the biggest thing in your reality TV is MasterChef.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
sure.
And Muzamil is a massive fan of MasterChef. So I'm gonna give the mic to him there. He could talk to you about MasterChef as much as he wants.
Yeah.
He has like hundreds of questions for you lined up for that.
Absolutely. But before we get to MasterChef, just on the I'm a Celebrity get me out of here.
Yeah.
I remember we had Tahir Bilgich.
Yeah.
So
He was
he'd
on the
been-
year before me. Yeah.
So he's been on, and you find that anyone who's been on that show has some horrendous, horrific tales or stories to tell. Share one with us today. What was the worst thing you had to endure?
Maz, I'd love to tell you, but I honestly got kicked out so quickly
That's why.
that I barely had the experience. The worst one that happened to me was there was a challenge where, you know, those lottery ball machines? They
Yeah.
made a human-sized one, and we had to sit in it, and they kept spinning it, and there'd be questions that were asked that are based on the answers are always numbers. So I can't say how many goal holes in a full golf course. So 18. So now while you're spinning upside down, you're trying to find the number 18 of all these balls that are falling, right? So it's like your head spinning, it's that, but on top of that, they kept tipping like different things onto you. So I remember there was like cockroaches, there was worms. They tipped like the fat of animals, like it's gross, very haram. Like there was definitely not halal fat. I'll tell you that much, right? Just oh man, and so it stinks and all of that. So that's the worst one, but that's the only challenge I got to do, like, because I got kicked out like not long after that, and I'm gutted about getting kicked out. I wanted to have the full experience of having to eat something,
Grubs.
grub, yeah, like they had like the gross eating challenges, and I never I don't want to do it, but I'm just curious how far I can, I'm always curious to see how far I can push myself, and I felt like I barely scratched the surface of what I was able to, my discomfort, like I felt too comfortable.
Well, you gave it a go. That's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I know. I definitely, it's one of those ones that I go, if they ask me again, I would absolutely, because, and it's tough. Don't get me wrong. Like I live in the city. I love my comforts. I try and spend as much money as I can on scented candles and pedicures and stuff. And so for me, sleeping outdoors in a tent with baboons yelling, like, it's pretty scary. I'm not going to lie.
It's way out of your comfort zone. Now, moving a bit more possibly into your comfort zone, MasterChef. As Ali said, massive fan. We as a family sit down, religiously watch the show.
Mind you, I started hating MasterChef when the new judges came in.
All right.
Big
okay.
fan of the other ones.
Right.
So I'm not much of a fan.
Why do you
anymore.
hate the new judges?
I don't know, man. The three guys were just the OG.
You just need to embrace change, bro. Like, I
I don't know, man. It doesn't have the same punch.
Sure, but it can be its own thing. Look, you're allowed to not enjoy it. That's fine. But it's just small. I'm just curious as to what your reasons were, and sounds like it was just not them.
Yeah, 100%. It's simple as that.
But interestingly, though, I would say that was one of the most out of my comfort zone experiences. More so, I was more uncomfortable on MasterChef than I was on I'm a Celebrity. But yeah, we can get into that.
That's interesting. But you did really well in that show. Like obviously, it was the 2020 seat.
2021 Celebrity
season.
MasterChef.
Celebrity
version.
MasterChef season. So in that you got the coveted eliminate the pin.
Yeah, immunity pin.
Immunity pin, that's very, very important.
Yeah.
Then you made it to the semi-final.
Yeah.
You were up against Tilly Ramsey, Gordon Ramsay's daughter.
Yeah,
That would be petrifying, even though she's young. But hey, the bloodline, the DNA, she's got it.
Right.
You cooked in the Vue de Mont kitchen.
Yes.
That's amazing. Massive fan of Vue de Mont, and even just to be there as a guest, as a consumer, it's amazing. Imagine cooking in that kitchen; it'd be amazing. Did you have any moment where you pricked yourself and you said, "Look, is this even happening to me? Is this actually real?"
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I did do well to the point of being able to get to the semifinals.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily frame it as I did great, because I think I was pretty average, but I was never shittest on the day. So every step of the way, whenever there was an elimination, if you watch that season, I was always amongst them.
Yeah.
Like I was standing. We're down to the last three, and Dil, you're back in, and you're like, they have the kitchen. What do they call the gantry?
Yeah.
Man, I barely went there. Like I only went there once when I played the pin, but the rest of the time. So I actually, being an ex-accountant and Excel sheet aficionado, I put it down in the stats, and I believe there were 15 cooking challenges in our episodes. And I cooked in 14 of them. Wow. So the only one I missed was the finals. Because every time there was a elimination, you have the chance to save yourself. You cook something. If you don't, then you go in elimination. I did it every single time. I was always up for elimination. But at the finish line, because I leaned into my heritage and my culture, which is filled with so much flavor, even though my technicalities were all off, it was still tastier than what, say, someone else did. You know what I mean? Like, I think there was Matt Leneve's, I think he made a duck that wasn't quite rendered. I don't even know what rendered means, right? But the chicken paratha thing that I made was somehow more edible. So they're like, all right, you back, you still in, you know? So that's why I sort of have this weird kind of ability to lean into how great I did, because I know it was more like survival. However, I'll contrast that with the Vue du Monde, which I think is not just in like entertainment, just ever one of my greatest achievements. Because that was I think I even made the joke on there, because I made this 2 kilograms of pork belly, and as soon as I pulled it out, I was like, oh, and I just looked at the camera going, oh, my mom's gonna be really upset, because my mom's Muslim. She's like, I'm like, she's not gonna watch this episode, but this is the best thing I've ever made, you know. And so I think that Vue du Monde episode in particular, I don't know if this went to air or not. It might have, actually. At the start when they're chatting, it was like, have you ever been? I think I was like, no, I'm what you call, you know, new rich. So I'm just like new to money here. I don't know. I've not yet got here. But what was cool was I could see from where we stood, I could see the apartment that I live in currently. Like, literally, I could see it, and I could see KPMG. I'm like, you know, and there's a really cool photo of on my Instagram of me and Melissa Leong giving the finger to KPMG, you know, because she's similar to me. She had like that, you know, the Asian mentality of the straight and narrow job, and just felt there was something else she needed to do and broke away from it. And so she and I really connected on that level of not trying to force yourself into a lane that you don't really belong into.
Would you say that she's your favorite judge, Melissa?
Yeah, without a doubt. No offense to Jock and Andy. I loved all of them, but I think Melissa and I really connected. What's interesting for me, and it's a shame because of the format of the show, I think the show never reveals, doesn't have the opportunity to show how funny all three of them are. Like, they're really, really funny, and we had a lot of laughs, but I think it doesn't necessarily, like, some jokes might be just a bit too crude or whatever, but that's my biggest sort of, not regret, but the thing that I feel sad about. I wish more people knew just how hilarious all three of them are, you know what I mean? And we had some big laughs. And, you know, they were making, you know, the jokes and stuff as well. It wasn't just like me as a comedian making them laugh or anything. No, they were as hilarious as anyone else, as was Matthew Leneves and Chrissy Swan. You know, there was lots of laughing during that whole show. So it was one of the coolest experiences.
Obviously, Nick Riva won the season. Is he really that good a cook? Like, you don't expect it from a tall, lanky AFL footballer.
You don't expect it, but what it is actually goes to show the work ethic, I guess, or just the skills you have to be an elite at any in your field. To be top of your field requires like an obsession and / willingness to just, you know, go balls out. You know what I mean? And that's what he was. He was just really, like, from day dot, just constantly like getting better with each episode. You could see the progress of him as well. And I think the 5 semi-finalists, I think you could see it. You could track, you know, compared to what we made at the start, compared to the Vue du Monde and those things. Like, you could see we all just worked our ass off to try and get better.
Usually you see that during the season where everyone starts off at pretty much a very basic level, and by the end of it, somehow they're cooking these miraculous, amazing creations.
Yeah, well, it's that thing of you become, it becomes your focus. And it becomes all, for me, it became all I thought about. But yeah, basically, it was like, I was just obsessing with recipes, and I would be, you know, we'd get picked up to go film at, like, say 9 o'clock in the morning, but I would get up in the morning and, like, practice how to make paratha or puri or something. I'm like, because my strategy was, if I can learn what's in the underbench and try different things based on the underbench, then no matter what they throw at me, I can, you know, do something different each time.
That's a staple, right? That will always be there.
So that's I can't remember the exact ones, but it's like flour, you know, pasta flour, what are they called? Olive oil, sugar, salt, butter, eggs, you know. So those are your like staples. So if you can, I kind of based a lot of my things around that.
Yeah, fair enough. One technical debate that my wife and I have been watching the show is
the food. Is it whether it's cold when they eat it?
spot on.
Right, that's what.
Imagine you're gonna.
Because it's the only question I've heard people always ask about the show.
How do they do it? You finish cooking.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's a hot meal that you've cooked. Then the benches get cleared. So the first question is, who on earth does all these dishes? My wife is always marveled at that. She's like, who's doing all these dishes?
Well, I know it's not me. That's
It's
for sure, because I don't
it's
even.
not you guys.
I try to avoid
But all
the
these
dishes at
dishes
home.
vanish. Everything is cleaned
So
up.
okay, so here's how it works. Basically, so the time that they say, your time starts now and your time is up. That's 100% accurate. There's no stopping the cameras or anything. Once you go, you go.
Yeah.
As soon as they say your time's and that's your time or whatever, and there's clapping or whatever, and then the cameras switch off. There is on each bench there's like a grey plastic mat kind of thing, and the rule is whatever you've put on that's your dish.
Okay.
So make sure that because you can't once the time is up, whatever's on that they take it away because you can't add garnishing, none of that. That's off limits now. So don't keep anything that you don't want on there because say you like accidentally, I don't know, had a smear mark or something like that. It'll have to be, presented to them that way. So it's kind of the mentality of the kitchen pass, I think they call it in the kitchen. So whatever goes on the pass goes to the customer, right? So that's there. So what happens next is you make like a second version of it or a third version of it or whatever straight away. Like say it's the what's a good example? Like I made a beef rendang or whatever, right? Yeah. So I served it up, blah blah blah, put the coconut rice and things like that. But then also there was like a whole bunch of coconut rice left and a whole bunch of the luna miris, this Sri Lankan chili thing, and the rendang. And then what the judges do is they take like a big thing of spoons and go around tasting it while it's fresh and it's hot.
Way.
They don't tell you what their thoughts are. That they stay completely poker faced, so you don't get a gauge, but they keep trying, and so they'll try taste, and they're already formulating their notes, going, okay, right, this one's got too much salt, okay, cool, but then I tasted burnt garlic or whatever, but we don't know what they're thinking until the actual judging, because what happened is between them saying time's up to sometimes when you have to bring your thing, it's like could be an hour and a half, 2 hours later. So the cool thing is I love this about it because it still stays true. It's not like it's bullshit because there's no but it's to try and make it as realistic as possible. I think it's brilliant the way they do it because then they take the dish that was on as soon as they stop, they take that to a different set which looks like the judge's table and they film it like all the different angles. So when you see the contestant placing it down, then it'll cut to the shot that they took 2 hours ago, so it looks fresh and the steam and all of that.
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah. So it's
There's
cool,
always
right?
a close-up. That shot's always a close-up.
Close-up, and that shot in a mirrored kind of another table that looks exactly like the judge's table. So then when the judges do the tasting, it's reheated in a microwave or whatever, but they then, they do eat it for real, but they do give you the opinion that pretty much was what they had, last time. Actually, I'll use a different example as well to counter that, which is, I don't know if you remember, Tilly Ramsey made like a pasta that had like an egg yolk in it, like a spinach pasta.
I remember that, yeah.
So something like that, they will prioritize that she gets tasted first.
Because
it's so complicated or whatever that, there's hard to make multiple versions of it or something like that. So first up, we'll just get Tilly's thing. So, they do take into consideration, things like that. It's not always this trick of like, all right, we'll put this aside and 2 hours later they can have this cold bit of pasta and then the yolk wouldn't have like broken up beautifully and things like that. So yeah, it's because you can't really reheat something like that because the yolk will, I think, cook too much or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know the technicalities, but that's the main way they kind of like, bypass the situation of like the time delay between. So the benches all get cleared. We go for lunch and things like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Where did you learn your craft? You know, you don't give yourself enough credit for how good a cook you are, but it's not easy to get that far in a tournament like this as well.
Right.
And the food that you presented was actually good. Like visibly, I hadn't tasted it, but visibly it was actually pretty good. Where did you learn this craft?
So for me, I think it was first my girlfriend's mum. She taught me a whole bunch of recipes that were really quick and easy to make. While I was because I was in WA with her family when I got the call, and then I basically just, she was like, all right, this is, so the rendang was her recipe and things like that. But then afterwards, it was just a case of YouTube. There's a YouTuber called Ceylon Lover. I don't know whether she's changed her handle now, but she had a whole bunch of Sri Lankan recipes, because that was my strategy. If I had a strategy, it was going, I really just want to, so before MasterChef, I didn't really cook. Like, I hated cooking. Like, before the pandemic, I spent 2 years not making a single meal, because I would just go to cafes, restaurants, or takeaway, Uber Eats, whatever, you know? So I really didn't like cooking, because it was a single guy, and it was just such a waste, because it tastes crap when you cook. You know, if you're bad at it, it tastes shit, and then you put it in the freezer for whom I don't know, and then it just stays there for 3-4 months, and then you just throw it straight out. You know what I mean? So it's pointless. But when this challenge came up, being someone who's like, oh, I love to push myself out of my comfort zone, I'm going to say yes to this, even though I don't know how to cook. So I had help from my girlfriend's mom. Then I called up a lot of my relatives, like my auntie and stuff, who I was like, what's grandma's biryani recipe? Asked my mom about the paratha. Asked my sister-in-law, so my brother's wife, she's Indian. I was like, well, you know, this dessert that, you know, her mom makes for me. I'm like, how do I make that? Because I was like, let me just find the things that I have a story connected to, a story that's connected to the food. But also, from a selfish point of view, even if I get kicked out, hey, I just learned how to make that.
Yeah.
So for me, it was my way of making myself bulletproof, which is no matter, regardless of how far or not I go, at the very least, I learned something new.
Yeah.
So that was my thing, is anything I made was something I was always curious about, wanting to know how to, like how to make fresh pasta.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that was, like I now know that, you know, and it makes me so happy.
It's fascinating how you make everything from scratch there, and that's something you don't do at home. Like at home, you just get store-bought pasta, you boil it up and off you go. But here, you're actually making your own pasta, you're making your own breads, you're making everything from scratch. It's a lot of work, and realistically, who's really can actually do all that stuff?
And the trick as well is the portions, you know, so things that look complicated at home, when you make it there, you try and do it small. So if something's in the oven, if it's in a smaller container, it's more likely to cook quicker. I think Chrissy Swan suffered because she made this big, massive cake that she got eliminated on, I think. Oh, she was in whatever. But her last episode, she made this big, fluffy kind of cake, but it just took so long to bake that it was too raw or something like that, I think. So, yeah, the trick is to go, okay, that same recipe, I'll try and make smaller portions of it.
Look, before we start wrapping up, I have to ask you something. What I said at the start, Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
You met him.
Yeah.
You shook his hand?
I did.
With your right hand?
I assume
man,
so.
that hand touched Chris Hemsworth, guys.
Yeah, man. It's touched your hand now. I mean, it touched my dick a few times in between. So, you know, hope you've been sanitizing.
But hey, tell me how to feel meeting him. Because I'm assuming that's the most famous person you've met.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, I think you might be right. I don't...
It's hard to get bigger than Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. I was going to say Charlotte from I'm a Celebrity, Charlotte Crosby. She was on Jersey Shore. She was the biggest sort of... Well, she's the one that I guess I'm the biggest star that I'm friends with.
Right.
Hemsworth wouldn't even remember me already. But what happened was, it was the Actor Awards at 2022 Actor Awards, and he was like receiving an award, like special award for trailblazing, like, you know, Aussie who's doing great things, kind of thing. And when I was presenting, I basically did a couple of jokes about him, not about him so much as like me just saying, hey, I'm really excited that I can't believe I'm sitting at a table with Rebel Wilson and Chris Hemsworth's behind me. I'm like, yeah, try a bit harder next time, you might be able to come to the front table. But then I pointed out how in 2005 he won the Logie for Best Newcomer, which is the exact same Logie that I won in 2018. And I said, and now, you know, he's Thor and I have a podcast, you know? and so he was laughing for that whole thing. Apparently, like, I couldn't tell because I was a bit too, nervous and far away. And so, so then I had the confidence to go, okay, he has some context to who I am. And so I went to say hi, and he was manager. He was talking to someone as his manager, like, "Oh, do you want to chat? Yeah. Just hit him on the head, like, just get to the." And then she's like, "Hey, Dill wants to talk." And she's like, "Oh, hey, man." He's like, "Oh, that was really great." And I was like, "Oh,
that's crazy."
There you go.
Thor laughed at my stuff. That's just.
I would cry if I meet Chris.
Yeah,
I don't know what anyone else would do. I'll cry if I meet Chris.
I really wanted to hold his bicep. I didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, the once in a lifetime opportunity. She's just gone for
No,
it.
but that would be like, what am I going to say? Hey, man, really?
Yeah, ask him. Just do it. Guys, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Have you seen how big he is? I'm pretty sure he can handle himself, and I can't.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But maybe, Dill, before we wrap up, what I usually like to do is ask 10 rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Now, you could take as fast or as slow as you want. It's totally up to you. But the first question...
Does that defeat the purpose of making it rapid fire?
Yeah, so it's up to you how you want it. It could be
So
rapid
it's just
fire.
more questions, really.
It is a rapid fire. Just single answers.
Okay, short answers. Okay,
Short answers.
Let's define the parameters.
All right, I'm going to ask you. Your first question is favorite comedian.
I guess Eddie Murphy was the first big one when I was small, like 11 years old, seeing Delirious. So he's my sort of safest one to kind of cover the blanket of movies as well as stand-up.
All right. The favorite gig you've ever done?
2017, when my parents saw me headline.
Most famous person you performed in front of?
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. All right. Favorite food?
Well, does it count as performance? But I guess presenting is kind of a performance.
It's the same thing. Favorite food?
No, I'm not answering that. It's too hard. What do you want me to pick between, like, you're asking Mazza which one of his favorite kids are? Like, you can't do that.
All food.
You know what I mean? I have my death row meal, I guess, which is if I was on death row, what would I want? I'd want Mum's parathas, my grandma's biryani, fried chicken, and ice cream.
Death row. I think I should change my question to: if you're on death row, what would you pick?
What would your last meal be?
That's
wow. Good content.
Yeah.
Favorite MasterChef judge?
Mel Leon.
Even from the old crew as well? She's still your favorite?
I've got to say something that I've said in public before, but I'll say again. I've never watched MasterChef.
He came on any season.
My first ever episode of MasterChef that I ever watched was the episode I was in as it was being filmed. I'm like,
no
wow,
way.
this is a good show. I can see why it's so popular.
Favorite superhero?
Oh, Batman.
Batman. That's the way. What is your deepest fear?
Being buried alive.
That is terrifying. There's a movie called Buried.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Buried alive. Oh my goodness.
I reckon that's
Anxiety.
the worst one. That one I'm getting my foreskin caught in a zip. That's happened and I'm still scared.
We're Muslims.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. You guys have faced your fears.
If you could have a date or dinner with anyone in past, present, future, who would it be?
Eminem.
Eminem.
Mm-hmm.
That's random.
No, it's like if you ask me who's my biggest influence on comedy, it's Eminem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though he's not a comedian,
Yeah.
his approach to his craft is the thing I'm whether it comes to sobriety, whether it comes to work ethic, it's all both Eminem.
That's crazy. Most famous person on your phone?
Probably Charlotte from Jersey Shore.
Last question. What advice?
Geordie Shore. She's Geordie Shore.
Yeah. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Oh, I really, really love this question. You know what? It's a hard one because there are things that mistakes I made, but because of those mistakes, I was able to kind of channel a career that be more authentic. So one that came to mind was drinking, right? Drinking was really bad for me at the end. So 18, 19 is where it started. So my instinct is to say something along those lines of like, hey, just, don't feel the pressure to have to, drink too much or whatever, those types of things. But the problem is because I was a pisshead, I wasn't applying myself to accounting, and because I wasn't applying myself, I got fired, and because if I got fired, I ended up being a comedian. Had I had my shit together, I think I still might have been working in that world, which I know wouldn't have made me as happy as this world makes me. Mm-hmm. So it's a hard one to say, but it's most likely that I love if I had more time to think about it. It might be that, I think. Or maybe just, look out for a thing called Bitcoin.
That's a good one. A lot of people will think that. But hey, Dil, thank you so much for coming. On that note, we'll end it here. Thank you for the laughs. Thank you for especially MasterChef insight. Like we did not know. I don't think any of the viewers will even know that.
Yeah, that's behind the scenes.
I didn't break any contractual obligations.
Okay, what's done is done.
But for me, I just think it's really cool the way they do it. Because it's not like it's fake, you know what I mean? It's still, you're still getting what the show is.
I personally didn't expect them to go to their tables and just take speed. I did not expect.
What's impressive is their poker face. Because, I'm like looking. Occasionally, I remember thinking with the rendang, for example, Jock just kept, so it's a pressure cooker of beef.
Yeah.
And he just kept going one after the other.
Just gave it away
just
then?
kept. So I was like, oh, he's enjoying that.
You must like it.
He must like that, yeah.
But thank you, Dil.
My pleasure, boys. Thank you so much for having
me.
me. I really appreciate it.